a publisher, and one day my daughter Christina asked me to write a novel with her. Well, that day was long ago, and that little girl is now an adult. But our novels live on. The Truth Seekers Mystery Series highlights a homeschool family, the Murphy teens, in an action-adventure novel that is sure to entertain as well as teach creation truths. To get your copy, visit our website at truthseekersmysteryseries.com.
This is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Welcome to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Your host, Felice Gerwitz, is an author, a publisher, and your radio show host. She will encourage, educate, and inspire you with answers to your most pressing questions from homeschool, marriage, parenting, and much more. Felice loves to equip moms to live a Christian life because every moment counts. Be sure to visit her website at mediaangels.com. And here's your host, Felice Gerwitz.
Hey everyone, welcome. This is Felice Gerwitz with an episode of Vintage Homeschool Moms. Today we are going to be talking about the holidays and discipline. Whenever the holidays come around, sometimes we feel like we have lost control of our children. And so today I have a special guest on the line, and that is Meredith Curtis, who also has a podcast on this network. Meredith is a longtime podcaster on the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network, and her podcast is Finish Well. Welcome, Meredith.
Oh, Felice, thank you so much for having me. It's so good to be with you, and I love the holidays. And
I know you do.
Yes, and so I'm so excited about anything related to the holidays. But I really have a burden right now for child discipline because I feel like a lot of parents out there, Felice, they are lost. They just don't know what to do with their kids. Mm-hmm. And I run into that all the time, even at church, even at a homeschool co-op meeting. So I'm really glad we're talking about this. It's like two good things together.
Right. So when the holidays come around, what happens is the little ones, and even the older ones start acting out, and not necessarily because they're bad, right? But because they're just so excited and anxious and so forth. And so we're just going to give you some of our best tips. This is going to be a short show. And then I will have links to some of the things we're talking about. So you can go to vintagehomeschoolmoms.com and look for holidays and discipline. And Meredith's website is Powerline Prod. That's Powerline and then PROD.com. And you can find all of her books. And she's got some amazing books even on homeschooling and the holidays too. So Meredith, disciplining your kids when they are misbehaving. What are some things that you would like to share?
Well, I think that some of the principles that apply all year long apply at Christmas or the holidays, Thanksgiving. The first thing is this. The first thing is that you train your child to obey or to disobey or to obey when you raise your voice. And I see that a lot. I was at a party recently, and there was a mom who kept yelling to her children, blah, blah, blah. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. Then she would completely tune him out. And then when he became a distraction again, she would say, I said, stop doing that. And finally, when she yelled and went over and kind of, was a little bit physical with him, which probably didn't need to happen, then he finally stopped. And so I took her aside later and I said, I just want you to know that you have trained your children to not obey until you raise your voice. They know that you'll ask them to do something and then you'll just completely tune them out until they annoy you again. And I think I think at the holidays, it is such an easy thing to be so busy and so caught up with visiting family members and friends that we just tune our kids out. So we'll say, stop doing that. and then not even look to see if they stopped. Or I'd like you to clean up your room, not even go check to see if they clean up their room. And so I think we have to remember that we're the adults, they're not the adults. And we need to, when we ask our child to do something, we need to follow through. And I think that the number one thing parents can do is tune into their child. If you're going to ask your child to do something, you have to tune into them, and you have to make sure that they do what you ask, because otherwise you're training them to disobey. If you don't care that they do it or not do it, then say, hey, here's an idea. Do you want to clean your room? Because I don't care if you do it or not, but you might want to do it. But if you're going to say, go clean your room, then focus in on your child and make sure they did that. And I think that I always expected my children to obey. And some parents are afraid of their children. And I think, children naturally want to please their parents. Yes, they are, there is original sin and there is rebellion and stuff like that. But if you can set the tone of saying in your mind, if I tell my child to do something, then I'm going to expect that they do it, and I'm going to follow up and make sure they do it. And if I am not going to follow up, if I'm not going to tune into them, then I'm not even going to ask them to do it. I'm just going to suggest it.
Excellent. Excellent. Yes. What do you think about this? They'll be like, no, thanks, Mom.
Do you want to?
Yeah, no. I don't want to. I think for us, one of the things that I, happened chanced on was letting my kids know what I expected ahead of time. So whether we were going in a store or whether we were going to someone's house, or whether people were coming over, and this happened when my in-laws were elderly and would come over, and they were using walkers. And just to get from the table to the bathroom was a trek. And so I would put my husband in charge of his mom. And then, before they even got there, I would gather around my grandchildren and I would say, okay, Grandma and Grandpa are coming and they're going to be using, I would just pause because, kids like to fill things in. A walker. Very good. They're going to be using a walker. And this grandma does not want you to wipe out Grandma Gerwitz. That's what we used to call her.
Aww.
And so, and they would be like looking at me and going, yes, if you're running, what's going to happen? And so they would share, and I said, so we're not going to run when Grandma and Grandpa, we run outside. Or I would get, and so I would tell them what to expect. So Grandma's coming. This is what I expect. Or if we were going to a friend's house and I would say, we're going to be going into this person's house. We don't really know them. And I just want you to stand with me. I know you're going to see your friends and you're going to want to run off, but you just need to stand with me until, I kind of got a lay of the land a little bit, because I'm one of those, as my kids would say to this day, Mom, if you could, you would put us in a bubble. Absolutely, I would. I'll bubble wrap you. That's not a problem. I have no problem admitting that. But, I wanted to know, is there a swimming pool? Is there a pond you could fall? And that's how it is at my house too. There is a swimming pool. There is a pond. There are some things that could be dangerous. So when the little ones are here, we tell them, you're not allowed to open the sliding glass door. It's very heavy anyway. So you have to tell the kids what to expect. And then if they don't listen, that's the next thing, as you were saying, when you need to tune into your kids, you need to understand and decide what you are going to do beforehand. Because when you're upset, all you want to do is leave, and then you're going to be really upset because this is your time to be with your friends and whatever. So I always I let them know, if you disobey me, guess what? You get to stand with Mom and Dad and talk to our friends. Won't that be fun? Of course, they would say, no, that wouldn't be fun. So understand, ahead of time, what is your discipline going to be? And do the kids understand that? And yes, of course, they're not going to always listen, and they're still going to be tugging at your hand because they see their friends. But, the other thing for me was I always wanted the kids to check in with me if we were somewhere else. So they needed to come check in and just let me know they were okay. Even if they would wave at a distance and I'd give them thumbs up or whatever. And just because kids can get into trouble.
Yes.
As they've gotten older, and because my yard, Meredith, you've been here, but it's 2.5
Mhm.
acres. And so, there's all kinds of things that can happen. And, as much as we cleaned out and got everything situated, but there were some places like where my husband kept his tools. So we would let the kids know that is off limits. No friends in there, no nothing, because that's dangerous. And so for the most part, they were really good. But again, if you let your kids know what to expect, then they're going to probably follow through some more.
I agree. I agree. And, that makes me think of respect and honor, because my daughter was saying to me yesterday, she said, Mom, I just noticed that people in their 20s and 30s are so disrespectful. And in the way they talk about older people, in the way they treat older people, in the way they treat their parents, in the way they talk about their parents, there's just not a sense of respect and honor. And I thought about it and I thought, oh, I just thought I kept running into disrespectful people. But, I noticed that when I grew up,
Sad. Yeah.
I think I said yes, sir, and yes, ma'am to my parents until the day they passed on. And so I would say a big thing about the holidays is that if you only discipline your children when you're embarrassed, then you're going to have a rough time with the holidays. But if you're all year long training your children are going to be a blessing. And one thing that is really important is for parents to require that children treat them with respect and honor, because the Bible says, honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise that it may go well with you and you may enjoy long life on the earth. And that's in the New Testament in Ephesians. And I think that's such a significant verse, because if we want our children to walk in the blessing of God, then one thing that we can do is teach them to treat us with respect. And the other day I saw a little boy hitting his mother and I thought, whoa,
terrible.
I mean, I cannot even imagine hitting my mom. Like, that would just be something foreign to me. And so I realized, though, that children need to treat you with respect. So what I would do if my children sassed me, I would say, hold on, I love you too much to allow you to be disrespectful to me. And I would tell them why. And then I would say, so walk back out of the room and come back in and just say that all over again in a respectful way. And we did a lot of that. We did a lot of do-overs. And that was a big way that I taught my children to show respect for me. And the other thing is that holidays, you are dealing with a lot of older people, and our culture doesn't teach now to honor the elderly. They make fun of the elderly. People talk about killing the elderly when they get to a certain age. And so I think it's really important. Like, I love what you said, to talk to them about expectations beforehand. One thing we can do is say, you know what, we're going to be with some great aunts. We're going to be with grandparents and great uncles. And the Bible says that you should really honor the elderly, because they're really a gift to us. They have so much wisdom and so much to share. And the Bible calls their gray hair a crown of splendor, even though I need to cover mine. I like to keep mine covered. But so I think that holidays are a great time to say, hey, what can we do to honor the elderly that we're going to be around? Because, and that will cause them to treat them so differently. It will cause them to want to carry packages for them. It will cause them to give up their seat. Teach our children that when older people walk in, you stand up, that you greet them and things like that. And one way that I think is a really neat way to honor the elderly in our family is to ask them for a story. Can you tell me a story about when you were young? And older people love to reminisce. And so it kind of kills two birds with one stone. It really honors the elderly, but it also allows them to be blessed in a really significant way, that they can share their story. And then our children are having a little history lesson at the same time.
Check it off on your homeschool list.
Yes.
Right. I just heard something recently about selfishness, and this, culture in which we live is pretty narcissistic with everyone, selfies and so forth. I can't take a selfie to save my life, so I told my husband I might be saved from that one aspect. We were trying when we were on a trip recently, and we both were laughing too hard to get good pictures, but. But anyway, that's what our kids are used to, right? Always being, if I take a picture of the kids, they want to see it immediately. And how do I look,
Right.
And that kind of thing. And so, people who are selfish and tend not to do for others are the ones who end up being the most miserable. And I have seen this time and time again. I had an aunt, God rest her soul, who, just didn't, that wasn't her gifting, she was more of I don't know, but, and one day I just felt like, the Lord prodded me, and I just said to her, I said, you sew so well. Why don't you do some things for other people? And that was a turning point for her. And then she was happier. And so I think that same thing for our children, that sometimes they come in, and again, they think that the world revolves around them, and that everything, where they want to sit or what they want to eat or what they want to do. And so again, setting some parameters. And one of the things you said really resonated with me, and that is you practiced respect with your children. Well, sometimes we need to practice unselfish behavior.
Yes.
And so when my kids we go into a situation and they're, pushing each other, trying to get in the door. And like you said, you're sitting there embarrassed because your kids can't even walk in the door without, nudging each other who can get in first. So what I would do in a situation, especially at home, if the kids were doing mean things to each other, which mine tended to do, and part of it, they were very competitive, so I'll give them that they're still competitive. They come home and they're betting basketball goals, and the punishment is you have to get up and get me water or make me dessert, so I tell my husband, I go, it's still a good thing that they're still good kids for the most part. But what I would do is that type of thing. If you are doing something to a sibling, then you're the one who's going to go get them, dessert, or you're going to bring them something to drink, or you're going to do an act of kindness for them, and until that behavior changes. And so, it was interesting, how the kids would try to get around some of that. Like one time, a drink that was supposed to go to my younger son went to me instead, and there was a carrot in my drink. It was punch.
That's awesome.
Punch. Oh my gosh, yes. That was my number 3 son, who was incorrigible in so many ways. And of course, he was mortified when mom got the carrot in her fruit punch. But, I think it really shocked him, and of course, I'm trying not to laugh.
So funny.
But that's important. We've got to work with our kids into, or I would say you need to go make their bed. And then, like you said, you need to go check. So, but once again, you and I could speak forever, and we are running out of time. But do you want to close with anything that you would like to share? And again, I'll have these show notes at Vintage Homeschool Moms, Holiday and Discipline, so you can grab these show notes.
Yes, I would. I remember when I was a little girl, my mom would say, others may, but you may not. Or others may not do this, but in this family, this is what we do. And I think that's really important to teach our children that, we may be around some children who, are rough and they don't want to tell their mom what they're going to do. And they sneak away and do something that isn't right, or they're not supposed to eat sugar, but they grab the sugar and hide it and go eat it in a closet. But reminding our children over the holidays, we're set apart to be holy because we love the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And
I love that.
So we're going to live a life that reflects his glory. It's his birthday. It's Thanksgiving, where we thank him for what he's done for us. And so one of the most important things that we can do over this holidays is to just relax and live a holy life. And we don't have to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes, but if we do, we just apologize and move on. But this is our season to please the Lord and shine for him. And I think sometimes children need to be reminded that they don't even belong to us. They belong to the Lord. And that, I would always tell my children, as for me and my house, we're serving the Lord.
I love that.
If you want to live in this house, you're going to serve the Lord. And so anyway, I think it's nice to think about being good in terms of pleasing Jesus and pleasing the Lord, because at the bottom of everything, that's what it's about.
Absolutely. Wonderful.
Oh, and by the way,
yes.
Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas.
And a happy Easter if you're listening to this at a different time.
Later.
With podcasts, we just are evergreen and always out there. But thank you so much, friend. It is such a blessing. I know you and your family, and I always thought that your kids were perfect. And
no.
yes, I know. Every once in a while, I would see them do something, and I'd say, "Finally, I think mine will be okay." But yeah, there's no perfection this side of heaven. But thank you so much. And so again, find Meredith's podcast at Finish Well, which is on the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network, as well as Powerline Prod, PROD.com. And you can bless us both by giving our podcast a star rating on your favorite app and sharing it with a friend. And connect with us. We are on social media, and I think out of all of them, I'm everywhere on social media, but it's not necessarily always me. So you can really connect with me more so on Facebook. I'm not on there as much anymore, but you can always, find me and connect with me there, and Meredith as well. So take care, friends. God bless. And
God bless you.
Yes,
thank you.
And we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Visit Felice at MediaAngels.com and TheVintageHomeschoolMoms.com. Vintage Homeschool Moms is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.